Hello, everybody. Today I have Priya Balasubramanian and her book, The Alchemy of Secrets. And she is joining us right from the United States. It's a Sunday morning for her. And I'm really excited to see her and want to know more about your book, Priya.
Thanks so much, Priyanka. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your interest in the Alchemy of Secrets. As you know, we were just talking, these are the two editions of the book. And this is the latest and newest edition. The book is published by Westland in India. And it is, what can I say? It's my baby. This is my first novel. I spent a very long time writing it, about 10 years. And the story itself is of a 23-year-old woman called Meera who lives in the US. And the book starts with her hearing about her grandmother Ajji's impending death. And that's the inciting event for the story. Basically, what happens then is that Meera returns home to Bangalore, which she left 7 years ago to be by her dying grandmother. And on the way there, she relives the memories that led to her leaving Bangalore and the estrangement from her family. This part of the story involves things that happen in Bangalore in the aftermath of the Babri Masjid demolition, and it involves a story with Meera's best friend Anisa, who happens to be Muslim. And so as we're going with Meera on this journey home, another part of the novel that's threaded in with this is Ajji's perspective, where Ajji on her deathbed starts to tell Meera about the secret at the core of their family. And this has to do with Meera's mother, Radhika, who died sometime during the emergency. And so the two stories are told kind of in parallel. They're interwoven with each other, and they come together when Meera arrives at Ajji's bedside. And what happens afterwards is the revelation of the secret at the heart of the Alchemy of Secrets, and what happens to Meera's understanding of the world afterwards. And it ends on an uplifting note. It's a novel that's pretty sad in places, and people have told me they've cried when they've read it. So that is the story of the Alchemy of Secrets. It spans about 50 to 60 years in Indian history, going back all the way before independence, and it ends in the year 2000, and deals with a lot of themes like women's roles and place in the family, the kind of othering of people that happens in society, prejudice, casteism, the Hindu-Muslim differences. There's all of that comes into the book. The story is told against the canvas of all this.
Great, great. It almost reminds me of the movie called The Bombay by Maniratnam.
Yes, Bombay, Manisha Koirala. I
remember that. And it has such lovely songs. I mean, amazing. I mean, when you say 50 years of history, it definitely requires a lot of patience, research, and also the whole art of like interweaving the historical events into a story, into a fictional story, right? So what do you do in your normal life? I think I just got to know that you are a gastroenterologist. So tell us, how do you balance the two, and how important is now writing for you after your first book?
So in my everyday life, I'm a gastroenterologist. I work in California here. I'm lucky that I have a job that is mostly, kind of 8 to 6. And I take some call, which is very immersive. But the rest of the time, I'm kind of able to switch off at certain points to focus on other things. And so I think writing is very therapeutic for me because it takes me out of, all the crisis mode and the conflict and the stuff that happens in everyday life. And I'm able to focus on problems that I know I can solve because I'm creating them. And
That's
so,
nice.
Yeah. So it's a bit of stress relief. It allows me to kind of experience and kind of sublimate emotions that I would have in real life, or that would sometimes maybe just get locked away and fester. So this allows me to kind of bring it out and deal with it in a space that isn't quite as painful.
Yeah, true. what has been your experience of publishing your book? Because I think you have been writing it, like you said, that you have been writing it for over 10 years. How has been the journey after that, after you were ready to like take it out to the world? Tell us more about that journey.
So that's also, that also has been a kind of long and slow process. I know we were talking earlier about how, often as writers, we write the book and we expect it to get published the very next day. That would be wonderful if it happens. And I'm sure it happens to somebody, but that was not my story. After I wrote the book, I spent some time trying to find an agent, and I did find a really good agent in the US at Janklow and Nesbitt, which is kind of an old and distinguished agency. So, the book had kind of everything going for it, but it did not sell. I got some lovely rejections. People really enjoyed the book. They liked the writing, but they didn't think they could sell it. So to people, right? So that they didn't think that people would be interested in reading this story. So then I had actually at some point given up on the book. I thought, okay, I'm going to write another book and this is destined for the drawer. It was not an easy decision because it took so long and had so much of my heart in it, right? But luckily for me, and at that point, I think I just started sending the book to friends saying, read it because I don't think this is going to get published. And that's kind of how Priya Balasubramanian, my agent in India, found me, because my husband's friend had actually passed on the book to her. And so she read part of it, and then she called me and she thought that, this was a great book and it would actually find a home in India. And eventually that's what happened in India. It was published by Westland under the Tranquebar imprint. Karthika VK was the publisher, Deepthi Talwar was my editor. And they really sort of, not only did they love the book and they did so well by it, they really supported my career as a debut first-time author. So I'm really grateful for the way things turned out eventually.
Great. I mean, the only, I think the misconception that a lot of us have is that when we write, we expect it to like really turn into a book and a published book in all the shelves really quickly. So your story is really an inspiration of perseverance that is very much needed in debutant authors. Tell us, do you also think that the story per se, because it is so set in the Indian milieu, was it also difficult because of that to be placed in the US market, or is the market still closed to very authentic Indian stories, or how do you read it?
I can only speak to my experience, right? And it's sometimes tempting to say, oh, they didn't like the book because it's set in Bangalore. It's set in a very specific suburb in Bangalore. There's a lot of Kannada words in the book. When I was writing the book, I was trying to write it in what seemed authentic to me, my lived experience. So I have no problems in saying this is a very authentic book because that is my authentic experience. Do people relate differently to, those types of experiences? I'm sure, like, people in Bangalore love this book. People in India on the whole, whoever's read it, I've heard about it. People who've lived through the 90s in India tell me, oh, this is it, this is how it is. Obviously, you relate more to something when it resonates with you, right? And we all hope that there is something universal in each authentic experience, that it reaches out to everybody, even if they don't share that particular experience. And I've had friends who are American and have lived all their lives in America read the book and enjoy it. There's been a couple of book clubs who've discussed the book in the US and they've enjoyed it as well. So I don't think the problem is with the relatability of the book as much as maybe people don't trust that.
The risk factor, no?
The risk factor, I think, is definitely a possibility. And I think, things are changing, I'm sure. And nothing would make me happier than obviously to have this published. But as the writer of this book, I feel very, odd saying, oh, the only reason they didn't like this book is because I wrote it in Bangalore, because I don't think that's the complete truth.
Yeah, true. Very true. Tell me more about the style. I mean, your writing style, or how does it, or what impacts your writing style? How would you describe your style, basically?
So I write these incredibly long sentences and I describe a lot of things. You know, for me, place is very important. When I write a scene, it's important for me to kind of have everything around the characters come alive, and that's true of you know, the history, the present day circumstance, and everything. Like so, I don't know if that's a style necessarily, but I will say that the sentences that I write are quite different. I used to go to workshops in the US where people tend to have a very spare kind of Raymond Carver style of writing. The sentences are simple and elegant and all of that. And mine were always long and meandering. And so I think it's a lot of it is what you grew up with, the writers you read, the languages you speak. And I think if you speak Indian languages, there are some things that come naturally to you that may not come naturally to people who have a more kind of Western background. I think the rhythms of the language, so the rhythms of English, of Indians writing in English, or even the way I write in English is very different from somebody who's not from this part of the world, right? So there's that. Other than that, I really don't know that I have a style per se. This book is written with multiple perspectives, something I don't recommend to any debut author who hopes to sell their book in the US, because apparently, you know, and it's true, readers have difficulty jumping from one head to the other, right? So when each chapter is written from someone's perspective, you're with somebody, and then the next chapter you're suddenly with someone else. It's a lot better to be in a single perspective novel where one person takes you by the hand and takes you through the entire novel. But I had to use multiple perspectives because of the breadth of the story. There's no other way I could have told it. And so, you know, that's the other feature about the Alchemy of Secrets is these voices that pop up every now and again. And I think it makes the novel richer. It certainly does ask more on the part of the reader, but I think we need to trust that readers are intelligent human beings who will go along with you for the ride.
Absolutely. I remember reading something which is not a multiple perspective, but a dual perspective, like Gillian Flynn, Gone Girl.
Yes, Gone
so
Girl,
it was like alternative chapters, and I really enjoyed it. I'm yet to read something which is very multiple. So when you say multiple, it is like 4 or 5 voices.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's actually 4 principal voices, and then there are 2 very minor voices that pop up, minor characters that have chapters that pop up in between, and they're kind of pivotal chapters. So I kind of threw away the rule book with that one and said, you know, I'm going to do whatever the story needs. So that's kind of the Alchemy of Secrets.
It's also logical, no? Because your story travels for 50 years. So one protagonist probably can become a bit boring if he's like for the entire 50 years, like if it is just a single voice. But so interesting, challenging, like you said, for a first-time author to try something like this. But I would say that you have been marinating it for like 10 years. So you're not really a new author in that sense. I mean, you have been in that whole thing for a very long time, in that inside the story or inside the world of those characters for a very long time. Amazing. So what kind of books do you read, Priya? What are your inspirations? Tell us some of your favorite books.
So I have, you know, I grew up in Bangalore where we had a lending library. I don't know if anybody remembers this among your viewers, but, you know, so we would go, you would pay money by the book, right? And borrow it and read it overnight. And then I would borrow books from my school library. I was a voracious reader. So I would read anything I could get my hands on. And I would read a book sometimes 2 or 3 times because I just didn't have access to another book, you know, after I finished this one. So in my childhood, I read a lot. And that kind of fell off after I started to write, and also after I came into training in the US, because there just wasn't as much time. I think I was still reading more than the average person, but not as much as I used to when I was, when I didn't have the responsibilities I did. In terms of authors, I love Indian American authors who have gone before me, right? So I remember spending a whole day just reading the Moore's Last Sigh, like over a day and a half when I was an intern. I love Vikram Seth, anything that Vikram Seth writes. I love Vikram Chandra and his writing and his kind of perspective on writing. Yeah. There's Kiran Desai, Anita Desai. I've kind of grown up on these writers. I also love Cormac McCarthy. Interestingly enough, The Road is a favorite book that I've gone back to many times, and I kind of am on the. I feel like I should have prepared a bit more for this question, but there's lots of the writers.
You've given us a lot of names. I can probably add one to this mixture. As in, my favorite would be Jhumpa Lahiri, because I can really, because I'm a Bengali myself, I can really relate to the whole migration theme that she has in a lot of her books. And I think, at that.
There's Sujata Massey, actually, now that you mention it. I mean, so there's the separate other genre that I really enjoy, which is mysteries. Okay. And Sujata Massey with her whole Reshimura and now the Indian series, there's just so many writers. Like, I mean, you think about Indian American, and then you think about mystery, and I've probably, I just love, and a cozy mystery is a particularly guilty pleasure, so that's like dessert at the end of the day. So there's an American writer, Diane Maud Davidson, and I think I've read every one of her books. Sue Grafton, so there's just, sometimes you're in the mood for something, right? And you find an author too. But you're right. I mean, Jhumpa Lahiri is definitely somebody that I would add to the list. She's a beautiful, beautiful writer. I constantly learn from her, especially her short stories.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else that you would like to share as an advice for new writers in their publishing journey, in their writing journey? Anything that you'd like to share?
So, I'm not sure that I'm the best person to give advice. Clearly, it took me a long time to write this book and a long time to get published. But with that caveat, I'll say, I think as writers, we get one shot, right? When this book is published, it's done. It's there for the entire world to see. And so I think my focus while writing the book was always to try to get it to the best place I could get it. And sometimes when we write something immediately, it looks fantastic. And then you come back to it 3 days later and you see that actually it could be better, right? So I think I would, and that's just how I would approach it, is to kind of constantly look for ways that, the way I did it was to find friends whose writing I admired. So we would kind of review each other's work and provide perspectives, because sometimes when you're really close to the work, you don't see what a person who is not as close sees on the page, right? And there could be simple things like story points that aren't clear to craft, to maybe things could be done differently, to try to weed out cliches from your work. And so I think that's really useful. I found that very useful to have friends who were writers, who were kind of interested and supportive of your work. Mm-hmm. And I cannot overstate the importance of that. Once you get past, the whole publishing gate, then you have an editor who gives your work that attention that it needs and makes it the best that it can be. But so, unfortunately, in these days, even to get to that point, your book needs to be really, really good. Yeah. And so I think it is useful to kind of spend some time to make sure that it's up to that standard before we send it in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Priya, for talking to us. And I wish you all the best. I hope
Thank you
you're
very
already
much.
writing your second book, because it's often said that the best marketing for your first book is to write your second. I don't know if you believe in that.
Well, I should be writing my second book. I have started it, and things are going slow, but I just got back from India and my emotional well has been replenished. So I hope to be writing more soon.
So some more lonely evenings to start writing, some more cold winter, but California need not be that cold, I guess. But
it's raining right now. There is, and with climate change, there's now snow in Southern California. So who knows?
Who knows? So yeah, so bad weather and let's say more like separation that we feel from from our family. Hope that inspires the writing more, and wish you all the best, Priya. Thank you so much for being there.
Thank you so much, Priyanka.
Nice.
It was lovely talking with you, and wish you the very best with everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.